Hello there, what's going on everybody? We're going to be talking about dials today for Star Wars Armada. Now, why are we talking about dials? Well, I'm going to get into that because there was a leak and it looks like there's a dial pack coming at some point. And so, we're going to talk all about this, but if you are new here, let me remind you, there's a new round of the giveaway going on right now for a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is subscribe and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. You'll be automatically entered to win. If you're already subscribed, you're already halfway there. If you haven't already, be sure to click that subscribe button. We do a lot of Star Wars talk here, a lot of tabletop talk, a lot of Armada talk, as well as other games like Legion, X-Wing, Rebellion, lots of Star Wars games. We talk about all of them. Here we're going to be talking about some leaks, and that might be some new product that's coming out. So you may have seen my video already about talking about all these leaks, Clone Wars stuff, the Galactic Fleet expansion, Separatist Fleet expansion, Republic Fighter Squadrons, Separatist Fighter Squadrons. All that looked really legit. We've been getting a lot of leaks out of Europe over the past year anyway, and so far, they have pretty much 100% track record. And I am going to talk more about all of these in specific videos, but I wanted to talk about this bottom one here, this FFG-SWM39 Armada dial pack for Star Wars Armada. Now, this one kind of flew under a lot of people's radar and thinking wow, what a dial pack? So what could this be? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because that does sound a little strange. Why would they make a dial pack? So these are your command dials. Presumably, that's exactly what they're talking about, is command dials. Because, I don't think it would be speed dials. I don't think it would be that. The command dials seem like it's the most likely thing. Now, it is not completely unheard of for Fantasy Flight to come out with additional plastic for games. We've seen it with dice packs. We've seen it with other things like the movement tool, and we've seen template kits and things like that for all of their other games. So that's certainly something reasonable. But we've also seen vanity items. And these are kind of like designer or deluxe items, and usually that's kind of reflected in the name a little bit, like deluxe bases for Legion, or those colored acrylic flight stands for X-Wing that they had once upon a time. Very cool stuff. So there's been a lot of speculation. I'm gonna tell you at the end of the video what I think it actually is, and I think it's kind of cool. But let's explore the idea that it could be some type of vanity or colored dial pack. I think that would be a really cool idea if there were some way to kind of customize your Armada stuff a little bit. Now, I will say there is a lot of ways to customize your Armada stuff. All kinds of aftermarket stuff. There's lots of Etsy shops and things like that. They have all types of tokens, trays, all kinds of fancy ways to to kind of pimp out your player area and your tokens and all of that. But there's not a whole lot of dial based stuff, so I could see maybe they thought, hey, nobody's making extra dials. Of course, I'm sure somebody's going to prove me wrong. It's like, actually, I make dials. Okay, congratulations, you do. But the thing is, so there's maybe that's what they were thinking of. It's like, hey, let's come up with some vanity dials. The problem is, I don't think that that's exactly what this is, and the primary reason is, in the other cases of vanity items, the name has kind of told you something more about it. For example, in the case of X-Wing, you had all these different acrylic color bases, but one would be blue, and it would have blue in the name. One would be orange, one would be green, and here you don't have green dials, blue dials, or whatever. It's just dials. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's not deluxe dials either, so it's not like they're fancier, or maybe they are fancier, but it seems like they're just standard dials. Additionally, we've seen faction-specific stuff for other games, like the dial upgrade kit for X-Wing for their maneuver dials in X-Wing. And those are, they're faction-based, and they have, special colors and designs based on the faction. But there's no faction symbol here either. Since Armada is now going to have 4 factions, I might have expected they might have wanted to give you some kind of faction-specific dials. But that's not something that's there either. So it's very confusing as to why they might be making dials. So on to theory number 2. And that's, well, what if these dials aren't the same as the dials that we've already got in the base game? And I think that's a really interesting thing. What if it's a whole new type of dial? So what could that mean? Well, the first idea is, well, what if they changed the dial up a little bit? And if they did something like that, we're kind of getting into Armada 2.0 territory, and there is some idea, then this is definitely a viable possibility, that they could be doing some type of second edition with Armada. I think if they were doing that, they would have said something by now, but maybe that's why they haven't spoiled Clone Wars already. You know, we have already seen, you know, some of the cards from Clone Wars, and it looks like the upgrade cards may actually be this full size. They may not be doing miniature cards anymore. So that could constitute something of an overhaul that's coming to Armada with Clone Wars. And if an overhaul is coming to Armada, it's reasonable to assume that there could be some changes to the way dials work. And if there are changes to the way dials work, then you might need, if you want to be able to, like, I'll call it a conversion kit almost. If you want to be able to use all of your Empire and Rebellion stuff in new Armada 2.0, you might need new dials. Maybe that's the only thing you need. Maybe the only thing you need is new dials. Maybe. Possibly. I think that's still going to rub some people the wrong way, because people did not like in X-Wing to say, hey, I have to buy this thing to use my old stuff. That's not fair. And you know, and I get it. Of course, you could always make the argument, well, you can keep playing your old stuff, but if you want to play against the clones, you're going to need the new stuff. And you know, you get into this whole, I see both sides with it. You know, I like sometimes a game, for the purposes of advancement and going forward, does need some updates, and sometimes that's something that you just need to have. But at the same time, it's kind of a bummer when you feel like, hey, I don't want any of the clone stuff, but now all of a sudden I have to buy new stuff to continue to play the same game. And you know, I would still be all for something like that, because usually that means there's improvements that have come to the game, and new mechanics and new cards and new gameplay experience. So having to buy some new dials to also take advantage of all the new stuff that's in the game, to me, seems like I'm buying an expansion, you know, and I'm getting to play a whole different game. It's no different than when you buy a new ship and it comes with a new commander and new upgrade cards that also change the game, because you're incentivized to, you know, buy into each new wave of expansions. So, you know, I don't mind, you know, supporting the game, you know, financially. It's rare enough that they come out with new expansions anyway, so I can toss down $10 or $20 for an upgrade pack if it's going to keep me playing, and it's the only, you know, it's probably going to be the only Armada purchase I make all year. So I really don't mind that, but everybody's in different positions, and not everybody can afford an extra $20 here and there. So suppose, so what would that mean? How would they have changed dials if the dials do change? Maybe the commands have changed. Maybe it's just artwork. And maybe they just said, you know what, Concentrate Fire is too close to Squadron, so we're going to do a graphic overhaul to make it a little bit easier. And if that's the case, then maybe you don't need it if you're an older player. Maybe they just wanted to change them visually for new players, so it's less confusing. And so you can go with the old or the new. You know, maybe it's something like that. Maybe they're adding colors to the different commands to make them a little bit more, you know, stand out a little bit more. Who knows? I mean, like, maybe they've just come up with a new type of dial that, you know, and the old types are good too. That could certainly be a thing. But what if they've changed the commands? What if they fundamentally changed the game? What if there's a 5th command now, or even a 6th command? Or maybe they've removed one altogether and there's only 3 commands. You know, something like that would definitely require you to get a dial pack to change things over. And that's an interesting thing. But now, I'm going to give you my idea, because I do think there's a possibility that the dials could be some type of conversion kit or whatever, some kind of fundamental change to the dials. I think it's a reasonable idea. But I've got a new idea. My idea is that this dial upgrade pack are literally just the exact same dials you've always seen, no difference whatsoever. Which would then beg the question, well, what's the purpose of doing that? And that's a great question. Thumbs up if you would have that question to that. Like, why would you release a dial kit? Nobody needs more dials. Nobody needs more dials. That's like X-Wing getting more focus tokens, right? Nobody needs that, right? Well, somebody might need that. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm an Armada player. I've been an Armada player for a long time. And like anybody who's been playing for a long, long time and been buying everything that's come out, you probably have a whole box full of tokens and plastic and things that you don't need for every game. You know, you have almost like I have like a junk box that I buy a new ship or whatever. I only take out what I'm going to immediately need. I throw everything else in the junk box. That that ends up happening. And this happens for every FFG game that I buy multiple expansions for. It happens for X-Wing, happens for Legion, happens for Armada. Started to happen for like Rune Wars when I was getting into that. It happens. You end up with excess. What if, moving forward with Armada, ships are not going to come with dials anymore. Boom, right? That's the theory. What if ships do not come with dials anymore? And here's my idea. Here's why I think that might be a viable thing. Plastic increases the weight of a box. So when they're transporting it, they're getting it shipped and they're getting it in cargo or whatever. The heavier the load is, the more it costs. So the heavier an expansion is, the more it costs. Also, making dials, it's more plastic, right? Like you look at like a Legion miniature that's like a $20 expansion. It's like what, an ounce of plastic. Well, these are about the same amount of plastic that goes into a miniature, you know. So what's the cost of these? Like, I think there's an opportunity to maybe reduce the cost of Armada, because that is one of the problems, right? That core set is a $100 core set, right? These things are probably not super cheap. Plastic is more expensive than cardboard. It may be a way to reduce the buy-in cost for new players if every ship moving forward doesn't have additional plastic in it. What if you're going to have Command 3 small ships or something like that? What if something like that were going to happen? Well, you'd have more plastic in the dial than you have in the ship itself, right? Which is just increasing the weight and the cost to produce and all of this stuff. So, you know, and on top of all of that, veteran players are just don't need all that plastic anyway. I've got more dials than I will ever use, right? And so any more dials I get are just going in the junk drawer, the junk box. So, you know, for veteran players, they're gonna be like, hey, no problem. I don't need those dials anyway. New players may get the benefit of having a cheaper game that they can buy into now, because they have to buy less plastic and only need to buy enough dials to run a fleet. Because look, how many dials do you really need for a fleet? A lot of fleets, you'll need no more than 12 dials. A lot of fleets, like 12's probably the most you're ever going to need. So if a dial pack has like 12 dials in it, boom, that's going to probably be sufficient for just about everybody. But knowing FFG, they'll make it 6, so you have to buy 2. Or maybe 4, so you have to buy 3. You know, something like that. I could see 6, so 6 sounds reasonable. But yeah, so I think most people are probably going to, if they're new, they'll get their dial packs and they'll be good, and then they're not going to have any extra dials. And if they do need extra dials eventually, then so be it. But that's kind of following the formula of most other things. You know, I think it's just kind of wasteful for them to keep making stuff that they deliver in every single expansion that you don't need. I would even take this one step forward. I would love to see, at some point, gameplay expansions come out and not have all the tokens that you're going to need. Like, we don't need, you know, all these extra command tokens. We don't need all that extra stuff. Honestly, the command tokens should come with the command dials. I think the dials pack, if it's command dials, should come with command tokens also, and then we don't have to. You can get away with not having to put a whole bunch of cardboard and as everything. I think you could really reduce the amount of packaging that goes into a game like this. So, which brings me to my next point to follow on to that. If they do this, does this reduce the cost? Well, that's a really good question, because as far as a business decision, like if I'm running some corporation, I'm like, hey, we can actually save, you know, I don't know, 20 cents on every expansion. Oh, great. Well, do we reduce the price by 20 cents? No, we just pocket that. We keep, you know, maybe that happens. Which is okay from a certain point of view, because I'll be honest with you, if something like that happens, that probably just makes Armada more profitable to Asmodee and Fantasy Flight, and then they're more likely to keep making it. And I am okay with that. That's a win-win situation for me, because corporate wins, as well as the players who love the game and want to see it continue to thrive, also win. So I'm okay with that solution, because, you know, even if it's a small, because this isn't going to be enough to cut the price of an expansion down from $25 to $15. It's just not in the cards. There's no way. That's probably like 4 cents worth of plastic at the plant level, right? So, you know, but there's a domino effect of costs, because shipping and then, you know, trucking and all of this other stuff, or cargo on boats and air freight and all of that stuff factor in. But it could reduce the cost of a core set. We know from this little spoiler that there's going to be a new Galactic Republic fleet expansion, which sounds like a Republic or clone starter in a Separatist alliance. pack, which sounds like a separatist starter. So it looks like they may be looking to reduce the buy-in cost for new players. And if that's a case, that's the best news of all, because if this is the case, and if you're going to get a starter that doesn't have bases, then that means that starter is going to be cheaper. Maybe the starter has bases, right? The starter usually has the things you need to get started playing. So it makes sense to me that a starter might have bases, but maybe the expansions won't. So the expansions can be cheaper. So that's, in my opinion, the number one thing that keeps people from playing Armada is the cost to get started with it. And there's really three things. There's cost, which is a factor. The 6x3, which is now just one way to play. You can also play on a 3x3. Although most people still play a 6x3. So there's the buy-in cost. There's also the size, and then there's the I don't want to get into another miniatures game where it takes too long or something like that. Which I have a harder time getting with that, because the games can go by pretty quick. That's fine. But really, the number one thing is the buy-in cost. People see, the core set's $100, and they say, forget that, I'll play X-Wing. Even though X-Wing's got way more expansions, and you're going to spend way more money on X-Wing over time. What they don't see is that, Armada only has one new ship a year, so it's so cheap for me to keep up with that. Of course, it's a little hard right now if you're getting into Armada, because reprints and all of this other stuff. But if they're looking at reducing the cost, that's a very good thing. And if this is one step towards reducing that cost for newer players, hey, only buy the plastic dials that you're going to need for your fleets. That's very, very good news. That's what I think this expansion is, but I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think the dial expansion is for Star Wars Armada? Do you think it's another effort to reduce the cost to the consumer to get more people playing our great game? All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you click that subscribe button. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Big thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I could not do this without you. You definitely help make this all possible. So thank you again so much, and as always, have a great day.